I began to have a really weird relationship with time. Um, my dad passed away way too early at 55 years old, and I had a really special and close relationship with my father. And he was a risk taker. I think it was partly the grief that I was feeling for his loss. Um, Understanding that he left a lot on the table, a ton of potential, untapped, unseen, not actualized. And that resonated with me in a way that, you know, I began to realize that tomorrow is not promised. Next year's not promised. The next 10 years not promised. The average American lives to be 78, right? We talk about midlife. What I really want to do is kind of continue to develop skills, continue to down this constant quest for knowledge, continue to be curious, to continue to skill up so that my potential actually rises year over year, day over day, month over month.
Today, I'm sitting down with Harry Wilson, the son of one of America's most elite athlete families, but most importantly, a founder who's dedicating his life to mental fitness. As you will hear in this episode, Harry is sharing how the loss of his father sparked his quest to bring elite athlete mental support to every employee and young professional out there. This conversation is also about finding joy in the little things and especially optimizing for immense impact. Hope you love it. Let me know what you think in the comments. All right, welcome back to the Founders Bible. Good morning, Harry. How's it going today?
Good morning, man. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited about this.
Absolutely, as well. We talked a bunch before. We already had a conversation, and I just said, "Look, I need you on this podcast because, like the chat we had, it needed to be recorded, not just for the sake of it, but because I really want to have the world hear your story, your personal journey, the challenges. And I love the fact that you're building a company, which is kind of like doing what I want to do, but in slightly different context.
Yeah.
And this time I kind of want to hear the story on the other side, because you also do a lot of podcasts. I guess you keep listening to a lot of stories, but I don't know how many times you share yours.
Yeah.
So here we are. The first question to break the ice, as usual, is why the heck are you a founder? What happened in your life that made you make this such a crazy decision?
Well, I was gonna say, like the first part of that answer, and there's kind of a tiered response to this, right? The first part is because I'm crazy, because I'm insane. That's why I became a founder. But outside of that, I'm obsessed with this mission, this space. For those that don't know, I'm a founder of a company called Limitless Minds. We've built a mental fitness and peak performance platform. It's a combination of some services we provide for companies, B2B, as well as a B2B enterprise SaaS platform that allows users to have access to world-class coaching around in the area of mindset and wellness and just overall kind of mental conditioning is what we like to call it. And just became really obsessed with this space, particularly in the B2B, with the B2B kind of market, because I spent a lot of years leading and developing talent, and specifically sales talent. And I just noticed that we were, these companies that I worked with and for, that I served, invested heavily in the skill set component of developing talent, in sales, features, benefits, product knowledge, how to close, role playing, objection handling. And I worked in pharma for a number of years, Alessandro, and we gave a lot of data, of course, to our sales teams to help them understand their market and how to attack that and grab their market share. But the area that I thought we were very negligent in was the mental side of it, the mindset component, the adversity tolerance, psychological flexibility, the way to help corporate athletes, if you will, have a plan and a readiness factor for the inevitable adversity that they're going to face when they're trying to, to move, market share. And so I just thought we had this unique access to world-class coaches. And we can talk a little bit about, why we have this unique access and some of my personal story, but we had this unique access plus this unique experience that we had in the corporate space. And we thought we could tap into it and be a kind of a Trojan horse to some of these other kind of wellness platforms that exist out there. And so I was really obsessed with it, and continue to be very obsessed about this market and the opportunity. And then on a personal level, Alessandro, I just really want I really have this desire to leave a legacy, to leave a footprint personally. I have 3 daughters, and they're young right now. Alessandro, I got a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and 8-year-old, all girls. I'm a girl dad, and I just really want them to take risks as they continue, through life, right? I want them to be risk takers. I want them to dream big, and I just have a sense that they're only going to take the risks that they're familiar with, and that have been in their environment, as they grow up, and I feel like, setting a benchmark for them to take risks is modeling that mindset, if you will, no pun intended, modeling that mindset. And so, to say that I'm crazy, and that I'm insane to be a founder is exactly what I want them to see, and hopefully they end up
Do
seeing
they do they ever
sort of
say
payoff.
like, "Oh yeah, my dad is crazy and he's proud of it"?
They say I'm crazy, but I don't think that because became a founder. I think they just think I'm crazy because I'm just another dad, with dad jokes, and I do wild stuff. But so they definitely think I'm crazy. The thing is that I don't know if in real time they understand. I think they ultimately, my oldest probably understands the work that I do, but they don't understand how difficult it is to build something from the ground up, to build something from 0 to 1. I don't think they understand that yet. And so, and it's, I don't really bring my work home a ton, you know what I mean? Because I try to walk through those doors at my house on Walnut Lane with, presence for them, and whatnot. And so, do they understand it in real time, to understand how crazy that, it is to be a founder? I don't know. I don't think they do, and that's okay. I think the broader spectrum of the work that we're doing, and hopefully what we see as outcomes down the road, I think that will come to fruition for them. I think that'll come to the surface. But so in real time, I don't know if they realize it. I don't know if they understand
Yeah.
the road that we're on. But I think
It's
that,
good. It's good that they don't. It's good.
yeah.
There's a thing in psychology. I'm studying right now a ton of bioenergetics,
Hmm.
and there's this archetype within your own psyche, which is the archetype of the child,
Yeah.
and it's very important for that child to develop as fully as possible into childhood. Otherwise, what happens is that you end up keep behaving as a child to compensate what you didn't have before, right?
Mm.
So let them live, let them like the full joy of childhood for now. It's
Yeah.
not their time yet.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I think that the last thing I'll say on this question you asked, as far as why, right, is, I began to have a really weird relationship with time. My dad passed away way too early at 55 years old, and I had a really special and close relationship with my father. And he was a risk taker. He dreamed big. He instilled that in his children. I have 2 younger siblings, a brother and a sister, and risk taking was a part of our kind of, it was a kind of an expectation for us, right? And he really instilled this in us. But when he passed away too early, I was 27 when he passed away. Um, Almost immediately, I began to develop this really weird relationship with time. I think it was partly the grief that I was feeling for his loss. Um, Understanding that he left a lot on the table, a ton of potential, untapped, unseen, not actualized. And that resonated with me in a way that, I began to realize that tomorrow is not promised. Next year's not promised. The next 10 years not promised. The average American lives to be 78, right? We talk about midlife. We talk about being middle aged. Oftentimes I think people think middle age is like 50, right? Middle age is like 39 years old, right? Technically, right? And so, like, as I started to approach my mid 30s, I just became really desperate to figure out what is it that I want to do with this life. When I was when I was 35, if I had 20 years left like my father did, would it be spending it doing, you know, other people's work? You know what I mean? Like working for someone else, taking the easy road, which was, this kind of corporate space that I was in. And not that it was easy work per se, but you can kind of go through the motions, collect your checks, right? And and just kind of wish that you had done something bigger down the road. And I just didn't want to settle for that, and so I'm in front of a lot of audiences. I do a lot of speaking. I do podcasts like this, Alessandro. I ask a lot of people about, their desire to reach their potential, and everybody raises their hand and says they want to reach their potential. And I challenge them in thinking like, well, why? And they're surprised by that but my take is that potential is not something that I'm that eager to actually reach and achieve. What I really want to do is kind of continue to develop skills, continue to on this constant quest for knowledge, continue to be curious, to continue to skill up so that my potential actually rises year over year, day over day, month over month. And what I'm working towards is how can I close that gap between said potential and what I actualize. And then as my potential continues to rise and I continue to close this gap, I'm able to achieve more, right? I'm able to actualize more. I'm able to actually continue to incrementally get better. You hear these people, these people talk about this cliche of 1% better. I believe in that cliche, right? And the cliches are, they're cliches, but they're cliches because they're true, and we all aspire to them, right? And so I think that this weird relationship with time has worked for me, and it's also been it's also kind of been weaponized against me in many ways because of this weird relationship with time. I'm very impatient, right? And that impatience has served me well in some areas where you have a bias for action. You try things, you take risks, you jump in head first in some cases, but also that impatience is kind of
and then you get the walls smashed in the face.
Yeah, you get heartbroken a lot, right? You expectations you have that maybe have been explained, maybe have been well communicated, maybe they haven't been in some cases. Those expectations tear you down, right? And you become disappointed in people or results, and so that weird relationship with time has worked for me and worked against me in many ways, and it's something that I'm still trying to solve for. And in this founder story, and at least in my founder story, that we'll talk about, and some of the adversity that you inevitably face, both micro and macro. This impatience is something that I have to check in with every now and again, and because it's a reality for me that I recognize fully, but not necessarily something that I've been willing to solve for, because it works for me in other cases. So it's been an interesting journey in that regard. And the loss of my father, I still deal with. He passed away 15 years ago. Yes, on the 9th. So 2 days ago. So a year ago, 2 days ago, and 15 years ago, 2 days ago, and from when we're recording this, and that was a tough day for me. 15 years in, and for a number of reasons, I reflected a ton on that, and I still deal with that grief, and it leaks into my business occasionally, which has been interesting. So, but I'm grateful for the time that I had with him, and the indelible footprint that he left on me, that I think is guiding, myself, our business, the relationships that I have in a positive way. And so it's it's been a long journey, and I feel like we're right in the smack dab in the middle of it. This is not like a
Wonderful.
success
Long
story
life,
yet.
long life to you.
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
I relate a lot with the impatience. I think a lot of founders share this archetype. Let's kind of, it's not an archetype, but like this kind of treat for themselves. Yesterday I was working with one of the people that I put around myself as a personal kind of like growth mindset team.
Mm-hmm.
And she shared with me a story about this very, very specific topic. She made the example of a movie. I don't even recall what's the name of the movie. I should watch it though. And, like the typical master and student kind of situation. And the master says, let's hike this huge mountain because there is a very great reward on the top of it. Oh, can you tell me what is it? Can you tell me what? No, you have to get there and discover it.
Mm-hmm.
So, they go hiking, they keep hiking, and the student is like, when the heck are we getting there? Come on, I'm so tired. I'm so, and the professor, the master is like, just enjoy this hike. Why are you wondering so much about what's up there? And then they arrive up there, and the master takes a stone and gives it to the student. And the student is like, okay, what the heck is happening? Like, why are you giving me the stone? Is this the reward that you promised me? And he said, yes. That's why you had to enjoy the ride and the hike until here, because you never know if you're going to find a stone up there.
Yeah, yeah. I
Right?
love that. I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, you have to enjoy the journey, and that's been a little bit of some of my learnings, over the last 6 years. That, and particularly the last year and a half to 2 years, is finding joy in the journey, right? Gratitude, um, perspective, and a lot of times, to your point in that story, it's having a mentor or a peer that can shine a light on the journey, and kind of help you reflect, and be that mirror for you to kind of see that you're doing a good job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you need to hear that occasionally.
Okay, let me make a quick break from the show to explain you why this project came alive. 6 months ago, I started interviewing founders to understand what were the secret sauces for their success. But even more importantly, I was curious to understand how much pain they had to go through in order to achieve their dreams. I've been an entrepreneur myself for the past 10 years, and I know exactly how painful this journey is, but very few people are actually willing to talk about it. And that's exactly what we're doing at the Founders Bible for Resilience. We're finally breaking the toxic hustle culture behind startup life. I'm on a mission to build a new generation of founders that can leverage ancient wisdom and science for true long term peak performance and longevity. If you want to be part of this movement, then check out wholegrainwisdom.com and join us now. Okay, now back to the show. It's funny because the way you're structuring your business is literally to build like the corporate athlete.
Hmm.
You have a deep experience into the professional athlete world, so we can talk about it a little bit later. But I'm on a quest right now to understand why founders are so reluctant to seek help, right? I keep saying that founders are like high professional athletes without a support team to win the Olympics.
Hmm.
We think we can keep going on and on and on and win the Olympics by ourselves, but everybody knows that if you get into a club and to a federation, they will put a team for you to work with you to make you win the Olympics. And you are the perfect example of what does this mean, right? So I'm curious. First, what's your take on reluctancy to seek help? And second, because you have such a deep experience from the athlete world, tell us a little bit, like for like a complete ignorant about this world, and as an entrepreneur, what happens to athletes when they get into this journey? What is it given to them to make sure they really succeed?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with the athlete piece as a foundation, and then make that correlation for the corporate athlete or the founder,
Mm-hmm.
that's building. So, you know, um, I've been around a lot of professional athletes. I was a former athlete myself. I played football and baseball, but I only made it. The peak of my journey was, elite college athletics. I'm the oldest of three. My other two uh, um, siblings were certainly uh, higher performing and more elite athletes than myself. My brother currently plays in the National Football League here in the United States, and he's played for, this will be his 14th year. He's gone to 10 Pro Bowls. He's gone to two Super Bowls. He's the winningest quarterback in NFL history through the first decade of a career currently, and he's had a lot of success, right? And so along that journey, I got to be on the sidelines, figuratively, watching this journey and getting kind of this unique perspective of, like, the professional world class athlete, and the difference between good and great, great and elite, etc. And those that are elite are typically have a level of competitive advantage in what they're investing in from a mental fitness perspective, from a mindset perspective, to help them handle pressure, to help them handle now in today's world, social media and and just media in general, and the pressure that is kind of placed upon you, how to perform, in real time, when the brightest lights are on you, and so on and so forth. But what's interesting, Alessandro, is that not every athlete, in fact, the majority of athletes still are not yet tapping into this competitive advantage, this mental fitness side of what they do. And I think it's being talked about more and more, whether from kind of the whole spectrum, from like mental health, as we probably understand it, as
Yeah.
clinical and really the psychology piece, all the way to just kind of like everyday fundamental things like how they talk to themselves, right? And understanding how powerful negativity is, and then kind of being able to reframe things, and so on and so forth. And so, but I think that it's still a massive gap for even the world's greatest athletes. And then there's this different athlete that has a full understanding of this being a competitive advantage. And I think that for the athlete, a lot of times what the wall that exists for them is the same wall and blockage that exists for founders, right? Which is,
Hmm.
they think they've already arrived, right? And so athletes, we have egos. Human beings, we all have egos, right? That doesn't discriminate. We all have some level of ego, and hopefully many of us are working on that and trying to, you know, break down our blind spots, and to have empathy and all these different things. But we have egos. We're human beings, right? Whether you're an athlete or founder or entrepreneur, or even an individual contributor at a big corporate organization, we all have some level of ego. And I think that founders have that same challenge, right? That same blockage. And so I think I think, even to be more specific, I'm a first time founder, right? How dare I have an ego? I haven't done anything, right? But I still have one because I'm a human being. Now, then there's multi-time founders that maybe have exited. The founders that they have on their resume, they've multi-time exit. They're YC, YC founders. They've done all these big things. So they have arrived in many cases. They've won, you know, like an athlete, they've won a Super Bowl, they won a championship, they won an NBA championship, they've won, whatever, that's their version of Super Bowl, right? Is exiting or whatever it might be. And so I think that people think they've arrived, and so they're not necessarily willing or even thinking about or seeking that additional kind of resource or help to help them continue to elevate.
Yeah.
I think the other challenge is that, when you're building something, you're so deep in that work that I mentioned the word time already 50 times on this in the short 20 minutes we've been talking. And where do the question might be asked to themselves, like, where do I find the time in the day? And so, like, because you're the 24 hours in the day that you have, hopefully there's some rest you're you're putting in. So let's just say you get 8 hours of sleep, maybe probably 4, but let's say you get
Well,
8 hours
you're
of.
gonna get them at some point.
Yeah,
Whether you
yeah,
get them regularly or you
yeah,
get them all of a sudden when you go into burnout, you're gonna
yeah,
get them.
yeah. So I mean, between rest and the work, there's only but so many hours in a day. So I think people are having a hard time, identifying the space and the time to invest, in mentorship and coaching and help, and so on and so forth. um I also think that there's a component of not knowing where to go, right?
Mm.
Because I think when a lot of times people think that what the work that we do is like a mental health solution, and we respect that space too much to co-sign on that. There's wonderful mental health solutions, professionals, etc., platforms. We're more of like the 101 course, like we're the fundamentals that we like to let people know that this is something we're trying to democratize access to this work for the everyday person, right? Because this is work that you don't have to, have a PhD for, right? You don't have to have a clinical psychologist working with. You don't have to go into a room and lay on a couch and talk about your deepest fears and the biggest challenges you've had. Like, this is like,
Yeah.
hey,
You don't need to
Alice,
prescribe
this is
anything.
like, Alessandro, do you understand how powerful negativity is, right? And let's say you don't. Let's just pretend like you don't. There's data around this to support how powerful negativity is. I'm not even going to ask you, Alessandro, to like be blindly positive, like all the self-help books tell you to be, right? I just want you to understand how powerful negativity is. Once you understand that, I'm going to have you, instead of trying to go from negative to positive, I'm just going to have you reframe that negative situation, scenario, experience that you're in, and just get to neutral. Just simply just get to neutral. In other words, I'm going to give you full permission to recognize that negative situation, acknowledge it, talk about it. But I'm going to ask you to follow that with facts and truth and solutions, right? And then let's just sit there for a bit with the solutions, and then let's put those solutions into place. And then if those solutions derive good results, then you can be positive if that's the space you're in. But I'm not even going to ask you to be blindly positive. I just want you to understand how powerful negativity is, particularly when you you go from thought to language, and what you're saying out loud or saying to yourself. What is that internal, helping you build some really productive internal ad campaigns, right?
How did you
um
get there?
yeah.
Like, how did you? Was it always like that for you, or was there a time where you've been negative to yourself? Tell me, what's your process
No,
around
it
this?
definitely has never been like that. I mean, it took me a long time to get there, and I still battle with it, man. Like, that's the thing about this that I'll tell people is that, like, this is the work that I do on a daily basis, but I still struggle personally with my mindset, which is wild, right? And I think, again, it's because I'm human, right? We are built as human beings to respond to negativity. That's why our news, our
Ah,
social
yeah.
media, all these media outlets are just constant negativity because they know it sells. We're attracted to it as human beings. We have, as human beings, a negativity bias. We have the evolution of the human being has been built around negativity and fear and survival,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Yeah, but the lion is not there anymore. That's
yeah,
the
well, the
thing.
lion's there. Unfortunately, it's that saber-tooth tiger. From the prehistoric saber-tooth tiger, right? That's not there. But yes, that is the truth. Like, back in prehistoric days, we were literally survive. It was survival mode, right? And so that survival mode still exists, but now it's in the form of different things, and we see this certainly in the United States currently with social injustice, racial injustice, our political landscape, and the divisiveness that exists within that world. Social media is allowing everybody to have a voice, and with and the freedom of which one has to speak and say things is a part of here in America, like our part of our ethos here, right? Which I subscribe to. But I think that technology that exists is allowing it to go, for the narratives to be snowball effects, and people respond to these things and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
act accordingly. And so, but for me, to answer your question, Alessandro, for me, like, I'm still a work in progress, even myself, right? And it's but I have began to, like, understand some of these principles that I have the capability to use daily, that do kind of um, help me grow in this area. And part of that is just understanding that I don't have a lot of margin for error when it comes to negativity. I say it like this, Alessandro. So, like, let's think about it like nutrition. Okay. If And I've gone through a battle of having to lose weight, having to lose a lot of weight, and I'm still trying to lose some weight, right? But I know that when I lost 55 pounds in 2021, I had gotten very heavy. Life had hit me hard, just kind of going through the cycle of having kids and
Yeah,
just work and all.
post-COVID
Yeah, post COVID.
recovering as well, I
and
guess.
and so, like, but for me, there's all these experts and gurus that help you kind of, the new way to, like, lose weight and to get lean and all these different things, and there's all these different ways. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not an expert in this, but for me, I just had to realize I needed to be at a calorie deficit. I just need to be at a calorie deficit. However I get there, I need to be on a calorie deficit daily, weekly. And um and so I just needed to consume less than I was, than my output. And what was interesting is it's very similar with our mindset and how we kind of go about our everyday. I need to be at a negativity deficit. That doesn't mean that
Mhm.
I can't be on social media for a little bit daily. It doesn't mean that I have a friend or a family member that's very negative and they want to vent about things that I can't listen. It just means that I need to be really cognizant about what I'm consuming from a negativity perspective. So instead of having us, in the background while I'm working, you know, a news or media outlet of my choice, whether it be CNN or Fox News, whatever it is, right? Doesn't mean that I can't have that up behind me, but I probably should be considering like how many hours a day am I engaging in that kind of stuff. For the people that are negative around me, how often am I talking to an individual that's zapping energy from me, right? When I communicate via even over a text message, how often am I going down rabbit holes with a peer or co-founder, a friend, and just understanding like that negativity is stacking up, right? And so,
Mm.
I think that what some of my advice for people is like, how can you go on a negativity deficit? How can you begin to track how much negativity that you're consuming, and can you reduce that? Just like the calorie deficit that I was on, you begin to track those calories and what you're putting into your body, and then also on the flip side, understanding that the work that I do on in the gym or whatever it might be, like that's helping as well. And so I think that while going on a negativity deficit, how can I also work on myself and bring more positive leaning things into my life, so that way that negativity deficit is real and I can check in on that weekly. And so those are some of the things that I'm doing, work on daily, weekly, monthly, to put myself in a pattern of more joy and more gratitude and so on and so forth. And so I don't know, man. It's not easy because we're surrounded by it. We're surrounded by negativity, and so like it's to me, I think it's one of the world's greatest epidemics is negativity, and we're wired for it to work against us, and so so I think for most of us it's an uphill battle, but there are solutions, which is good news. And that's one of the things we're trying to help people understand and give them tools and resources around. So
Wonderful.
that's
Yeah.
another reason why I became a founder. That's another reason there. Right. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, there's a question I keep asking, kind of like getting to the wrap up of the conversation. Because we are athlete founders and we need a support group, we need a support system for us. It's funny because of my accent. When I go into the post editing, somehow the caption is always becoming super system instead of support system. But I think that makes sense, right? Because like, what's your super system that you've built over the times, and what have you not put there yet that you wish you
Mm-hmm.
want to put? Like, imagine, I always make the kind of image of, instead of a board of directors, you have your board of personal super system. Who would be in those seats, or who are
I love
there already?
It's a great question. And I think it's a who and a what, right? But
Yeah.
so this is one thing that I've enjoyed about being a founder that I wasn't really expecting. So, and that I think that I recommend every founder has access to, and I think maybe many do. I don't know what percentage, but when you talk about support system, the best when I come out of a day and I've talked to other founders, I've always left that day like better off, right? Because I think oftentimes as founders, we think that whatever challenges we're going through in our business, whether it be cash flow, whether it be so as a result of that, raising capital and so on and so forth, whether it be people challenges, which is probably one of the biggest challenges of building something, whether it's a startup or whether it's even in the corporate space, like building a team and the people component, those challenges that exist there, the competitive landscape, we mentioned time and patience, like all these challenges, like talking to other founder peers is like cathartic, because you realize when you're talking to these other peers, whether it be one-on-one or in a cohort, that you're not the only one that are going through these challenges. They're maybe a different stage of those challenges. Maybe they've gone through them before and they have some solutions that they're going to provide, or they are, they're in a foxhole with you and you had no idea as far as like what those challenges are, and you can talk some of those things out. And so one of those kind of support system archetypes that I have is, a few different groups of founders that have been through it before. And ideally in that group, I have founders that are, a stage or two behind me. In other words, they're kind of following, that they're a year or two behind us. It's founders that are kind of almost in the, almost the exact same stage of growth. So we have kind of some real time, notes that we can compare. And then founders, certainly, and I love these founders that have maybe are further a stage or two or beyond where I'm at, to kind of give me some insights on what might be coming, right? And so those founder peers are probably some of the best mentors that I've had. Because a lot of times we think mentors, we're thinking somebody that's like, a guru, or kind of the perfect example of success. Maybe even somebody outside of our space that is intelligent or whatever it might be. But a lot of times it's the peers, the people that are in the same, have worn the same shoes or are wearing the same shoes, that I get the most, mentorship and accountability from. So that's one thing that I think has worked for me, and whether it be on purpose or accident, being a part of these cohorts and these groups has been really
Did you
effective.
build it yourself, or are you part of something organized, let's say?
In these cases, it's really been more organized,
Okay.
and I do think that, I think that I could do a better job of building some of those things myself, and more proactive kind of cold call reach outs to founders. But the organized things, I'm a part of this group called Endeavor, a global kind of network of founders and entrepreneurs. That's been really effective, and it's a tremendous value add for me in my life. We were lucky enough to be selected for a cohort within Google for Startups Black Founders Fund. And so for a year, basically we had weekly cohort calls where people would go around the horn, and talk about wins,
Mhm.
losses, challenges, need help here, advice on this. And that was an environment where really began to realize that, hey, we're not doing as freaking bad as we thought. Right. And in some cases, I might have been the expert in the room relative to, for example, sales. Right. We had a lot of tech founders who have built some really fantastic products, but they were having really hard time kind of attacking their ideal client profile,
Yeah.
their ICP and their product, and trying to find product market fit and so on and so forth. I felt like I was able to offer a lot of suggestions there on sales and building sales teams, et cetera. But so like those are two examples of like groups that were kind of organized, that
Mhm.
we either applied for or were selected within, that created that environment for peer to peer, you know mentorship and accountability
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. um the area that I'm personally, as a founder, like understand but is still working on and trying to implement, and I mentioned these two words already, is joy. Because, and I told my co-founder about a year ago. My co-founder and my CEO were here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live, and they were at my house. We were sitting on I remember this like it was yesterday. We were sitting on our back patio, my back patio at my house. I invited them over. We were kind of doing some work. We just wanted to kind of be in a chill environment. So we're at the crib. And what they didn't realize is that at that time, it was the middle of the summer, for about the last 3 or 4 months, they didn't realize that I told them that, guys, I don't think you guys know this, but I've cried almost every day, particularly every work day, since over the last 3 months. Like, they're like, what? I'm like, guys, this has gotten so hard and so difficult. And from reflection to, to either responding to something that didn't work, or, you know, feeling like I don't, am I, what have I got myself into, to, to questioning, my leadership. Um, you know, we had to cut some of our team last summer, and it hurt, you know, because I felt like I failed those individuals. Because we weren't cutting them because we were crushing it. We were cutting them because we needed to, like we had we
Yeah.
had some cash flow challenges. We had some lull in our sales. We had various other things going on, and so we had to cut some talent that had become, integral part of our team, and it wasn't necessarily their fault, right? And so, um, you know, in some various way, like, tears daily on a drive in my office, starting the morning like lonely in my in my little office space, just like crying, and so, and I told DJ Eitzen, my one of my other operating co-founder, like, dude, like, yeah, it's lonely, and I have a co-founder. He's a co-founder. But he lives in Cleveland, Ohio, and and sometimes you feel like you're living a different reality than other people on your team, you know, especially as a founder and CEO, right? And investor facing, and you're kind of the face of the company, and so on and so forth. And there's this pressure that you begin to feel, and the pressure is heavy, and so and I told him, I was like, I just need some good news. That's what I told him that day. I was like, because I feel like I've gone a long time, months without like good news. I think, Alessandro, during that time, there was also some personal stuff going on with not my immediate family, but some family close to me that was really heavy.
Yeah.
That I felt that I was kind of carrying a burden around. And so that it wasn't just in a silo, like, hey, work is hard. Hey, building this company's hard. Life is difficult. Life. And so
Yeah.
like you add like kind of the life stuff with the challenge of building something, and it got really heavy for me. Right. And so some of the things I was crying about on a daily basis had nothing to do with Limitless Minds, right? It had nothing to do with work. It was some things personally. And so, but I think, as we all know, like those two things can bleed into each other very easily, especially in today's modern world of like working remote and having virtually and all these different things, but I'm one, like, I don't just aspire just to be a great founder and entrepreneur. I aspire to be a great founder and entrepreneur, but really first I aspire to be a great husband. I aspire to be a tremendous father, um, a tremendous friend, and a great founder and entrepreneur, right? And sometimes those things don't play well in the sandbox together, you know? Because to be a great father and a great husband, there's a level of presence and engagement that you must have. And that time, again, mentioning that word time, competes oftentimes with what it takes to be a great founder and entrepreneur. They don't have to. They're not always, those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. But if you're not incredibly intentional, they will compete with each other. But I found
Definitely.
that one elixir to that, to some of that challenge and that pain I was feeling, has been like seeking joy every day, in some cases times multiple times a day. And one way I've found joy when I'm kind of on my shit, when I'm like on point, is gratitude. And I've mentioned that word already, but one way that I've been doing that, and really my team has been doing that, is that, you know many of these companies like ours, right? I mean, you have a Slack channel or some variation of that, where you communicate to the team on different things. For us, we in our channel, we have in our platform, we have a gratitude channel, and
Wow.
each of us contributes to that gratitude channel, typically daily, certainly multiple times a week. It's not mandatory that you have to put stuff in there, but it's kind of a standard that we've built in there. And and it was interesting, is for me, it's great to kind of share with the team what I'm grateful for. It's, for me, it's my checkpoint on expressing that gratitude, so then I can just remind myself of those kind of the joy on the journey. But also the cheat code is that as a leader of this organization, I get a sense for what my team is grateful for, what their where their gratitude is. Over time, you begin to, day over day, you end up kind of hearing from people what they're grateful for. You begin to kind of get um, you know, some perspective on what's important to them, right?
Yeah, it
And
goes
which,
way beyond
yeah,
work.
and then once you understand kind of what's really important to them, to their core, whether it be in challenging times or times of change or a tough conversation you need to have or whatever it is, you can tap into this level of empathy and understanding of like what's really driving, what's a drive for success for them, right? And because I think as leaders, one thing that we're really challenged with as leaders across the board is balancing empathy with a drive for results. And I think that really understanding what's important to people, for somebody it might be money, for somebody else it might be family, somebody else it might be specifically their mother because they're going through something. It might be a cousin that's really important to them. It could be The morning workouts that they do, and that their fitness journey for them is their number one thing right now. It could be anything, right? So that gratitude channel has not only helped me find joy, but I think it's helping our team gel. I think it's helping us as
Yeah.
leaders begin to really understand, our people. And it's something that I think we're really proud of. But even today, as I talk about this, joy is something that I'm continually seeking and trying to find, both micro and macro, because like in my worst moments and like the valleys that I've been in, it's almost like I'm in a dark closet with that stuff, despite being surrounded by great stuff. I mean, I got it really good, Alessandro. I got a beautiful, awesome wife who's really successful. She's an attorney. I got three beautiful daughters. I got an awesome house, roof over my head. Live in a great community. We're our business since those moments we've reached profitability. Um, you know, we have some really good stuff happening, right? But in the moment, it's hard to see those things, and you marry that
It's
with
a
my
training.
yeah, you marry that with my impatience, and it's and it can get ugly sometimes, and so yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's but that's you started this question to kind of close out this thing with like, you know what are kind of some of the archetypes and the pillars for um you know mentorship and stuff like that I put around me, like the
Yep.
people, the who.
Yeah, your super system. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that super system is peers, people that have been like in my shoes or are that are maybe currently in my shoes. And certainly you have advisors, you mentioned the board of directors, you have these different things, but like I want to talk to real people going through the real challenges that I'm going through today that can truly relate.
Yeah.
And not all the people that have given you capital, investors, have actually built something from 0 to 1, right? um right, and so they might understand, maybe they provide some value in some other areas, but as far as like the grimy, messy ugliness of like building something, many of them haven't gone through that, right? And so talking to people, and that can offer, and or that I can offer, um just some comparative notes and some like-minded, relatability to have been a big tremendous part of that support system, for me. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, this has been tremendous conversation. I have the feeling somehow that there's gonna be more
Yeah.
because I do have. I mean, I would keep going on to get like forever asking extra questions on this. Is there anything that you haven't solved yet that you feel like this community that I'm building, the even myself that I can help you with?
Yeah. I think that um I think the challenge with the work that we do, the mental side of things, mindset, peak performance, uh, there's a lot of different synonyms for some of the work we're doing, right? This space is really, um, and this is something that we are solving for, and are really excited to like bring this to fruition. Is the measurement component, right? Because I mentioned nutrition earlier, or fitness. There's platforms that have been so scalable and work really well for people, are ones that have been able to kind of demonstrate a measurable and like a truly measurable impact, right? And with fitness, remember let's say weight loss, for example.
Hmm.
You can track that very clearly. you know i i I got on a scale on this date. I put these tools into place. I I subscribed to this app or this platform.
Yeah.
I did this work, and then I step on the scale and I see positive results. Yay, it worked, right? And we're looking to be able to do the same thing on the mental fitness side, right? Where it's here's where you're at in these non-cognitive skills, these mindset components. We are recommending a personalized real time coaching and insights and tools for you. Here's your personalized kind of mental fitness regimen, and then quote unquote get back on the scale. In this case, let's remeasure these non-cognitive skills, and we're going to be able to demonstrate to you like how the work that you've been doing on yourself is impacting you in a measurable way. Because I think that, a lot of times I think mindset and like how we feel about ourselves and what we say to ourselves out loud, and so our internal language and what we all these different things seem like kind of this nebulous, you know uh
Yeah.
nebulous kind of area that we're tracking, and but like most people don't track it because they don't have any tools of which they can kind of see how they're progressing. And that's something that we're really excited to solve for, because I think once people can start to really track this progress like they would track their their body weight or their
Yeah.
their body fat percentage, or their visceral fat, or whatever those different things that we can measure by getting on a scale. I think that's where you'll start to see people like you know feel like this is a need to have, not a nice to have, and something that will really help them actualize all this potential that they're chasing.
Yeah.
So I mean that's something that we're working towards. And our goal, honestly, man, is to make this make sure, like I mentioned, democratizing this, like that every single person has access to some of the work that we're doing, right? We're really excited about the youth component, those 12 to 18-year-olds, for example, that are the future of this earth that we're living on. um, this should be something that they're working with daily, as part of their daily hygiene. And so that's kind of a kind of a market on the horizon that we're looking to solve a really big problem for, is younger people. um and so we're kind of figuring out what's the best and most responsible way to do that. And and
Wonderful.
AI is kind of has obviously crept into our space, and we've done a lot of exploring, research, development, and building in that area too. So I'll be really curious to see how that evolves over the next
And if
6 months,
anyone is an
year and a
expert,
half.
then
Yeah,
reach out to you.
yeah, exactly. And so yeah, so I mean, I think it's there's a lot kind of undone and unaccomplished yet in what we're building, but again, trying to be patient enough to
Wonderful.
to to
Yeah.
build and iterate
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
build and
Yeah.
iterate and build and iterate. So yeah.
Wonderful. Amazing. Thanks so much, Harry.
Thanks, Alessandro. This is great, man. I love what you're doing and creating, and I think this platform that you've created here is a tremendous value add for founders like myself. And so I look forward to either hopefully coming back on again. Hopefully you'll have me back, but also
Yeah.
listening to some of the other founders that you're spending time with, and again, these are peers that I'm sure I can certainly gain a lot of value from. So I'm grateful for you.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thanks, brother.